Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagano. We are back here in studio today. We've got a relatively light attendance today here at the office, so you're stuck with just John and I again today. But he says he's up to the task, so we're gonna see what we got. So, winter snowstorm moving in, John. I know you've been getting frustrated that there's no snow on the ground, but are you ready?
I am. I'm ready for this.
So when they say you're getting 3 to 6 inches back home, does everyone raid the grocery stores, stock up on bread and milk? What's it take to put a raid on the grocery stores in northern Minnesota?
It has to be predicting about at least a foot.
A foot? And then the shelves will be bare.
Yeah.
And that's to tide people over for 8 hours until they dig out.
I think I shared with you I got an hour detention once for being late to school in a blizzard.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think I told you, they're not breeding weak people up in northern Minnesota. They're hardy.
We're all above average.
Well, okay, John. First things first today. We teased this out a little bit last time we were here, but where at your house do you store your classified top secret documents?
They're usually in a safe or sometimes in a box somewhere.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is the box out in the garage next to your Corvette?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
all right. Well, no,
yeah.
I've been thinking,
or it's at my Chinese funded think tank.
Yeah. Does your and I would imagine that Chinese funded think tank could pay a whole lot more than what we're making here.
Yes,
I understand salaries are pretty high at the Biden Center,
and you never have to show up.
Yeah, there's a lot of work product coming out of that think tank, other than warehousing documents. I was kind of curious. I'll be fascinated to see what comes out of this investigation if we really do get there. But these documents weren't, the menu. There's some serious stuff in there. If it's top secret, it's real stuff. It's not, flyers from, Hoover's reelect in 32.
That's right.
This is, I don't want to diminish the value of Hoover memorabilia, but there's some meaningful stuff there. So far in the news reports, those documents were the UK, Iran, and Ukraine. And it seems to me that there have been members of the Biden family that have had some interesting connections with Ukraine over the years. I'm not suggesting those things are connected, but it does make one wonder what's really going on there. I know you're a big fan of our involvement in Ukraine so far. So
I was pleased that one of the first things that the newly elected Senator J.D. Vance said was that there should be a full audit of all the money the U.S. has sent to Ukraine.
Absolutely. Where does the money go?
Yeah.
And even stepping back for a moment of whether or not we should be involved in what it is, that's a lot of money.
It is
that we're shipping over there, and I think we should expect that some level of accountability with that. I noticed, I think in the news recently that the German government is deciding they really don't want to participate that at all.
Yeah, and
now and that's a gas play, and they're struggling over there. But I mean, come on. Yeah, it's just a lot of money. Okay, well, back to Iowa a little bit. It seems to me that so far this year in the legislative session has been the debate over the governor's school choice proposal and educational savings accounts. As we're recording this on a Wednesday, there was a public hearing last night, and I thought I would take a moment a little bit beyond what's actually in the bill to kind of talk about the process, because we have some people that listen to the podcast that don't really understand how a bill exactly moves through the legislature. And setting aside the whole idea of laws and sausages being two things that you never really want to see made, what is a public hearing and what is a committee and a subcommittee? And there's certain steps in the process that a bill has to go through. Ordinarily, a bill will be introduced and it has a subcommittee, which is a small, usually 3-member panel, sometimes 5. And And that really is the first opportunity for really anyone to offer input on a bill. Now, in the House only, there is a mechanism that the committee, usually it would be the minority party, can request a public hearing. And so sometimes those terms are used interchangeably in the media. That sometimes you'll hear the media refer to a subcommittee as a panel or a public input or something. But the public hearing is something different. It's often requested on higher profile bills. And so they had that last night. A lot of people showed up, frankly, on both sides of the issue. And maybe you saw some of the reports of that public hearing. Did you notice anything that kind of stuck out to you from that? Or
I did not. Of course, I just saw it on our favorite news channel, Channel 8, and basically
a short piece on the news of the day wedged in between climate change emergency reports.
Yes. But they just had a sample of one person speaking in favor of the governor's plan, and of course someone speaking against it. So, but the points on both sides that were at least in those comments were nothing really new.
Yeah, that was kind of my perspective as well. In my experience, those public hearings can be useful to let the public speak out, and the media loves it because there's opportunities to cover it. It really doesn't impact the status of the bill or whether it moves forward or not. But, look, transparency, public input is good. I mean, there's plenty of other opportunities for the public to weigh in with or without a public hearing. But so whether or not a public hearing happens doesn't really impact the timeline of getting a bill to the floor for a vote. So again, as we're recording on a Wednesday, it appears that committees in both the House and the Senate at the same time are going to consider the bill. Presumably, they will pass that bill out today, and then that would be eligible for floor debate next week. And because these bills are linked together, they don't need to bounce back and forth between the two chambers. So if both chambers, it would pass the identical bill, there is a mechanism it needs to go through and substitute and pass it and all that. But conceivably, that bill could be done and to the governor early next week. So and I know that's been a goal of hers, but so to have that bill to the governor in week 3 of session really would be tremendous and show a lot of ability to work together between the two chambers and some real consensus on the bill. So anyway, I kind of wanted to brief everyone on how that process works, but it certainly by all measures is a top priority or the top priority of the legislature to get that done so far. So,
and I've noticed I received a couple of emails today from some of our colleagues in other organizations in different states, and this is getting national attention, not just here in Iowa, but a lot of people are watching how Iowa's going to handle this issue. So,
I think so, and it's yet another example of real conservative reforms that do garner a lot of national attention, and Iowa getting the notoriety as being a state that is really out on the edge on conservative reforms. And it's not just tax policy. It's a wide range of things, and it's up to all of us in the conservative movement to speak out about it and tell the story about how it all works.
That's right.
And I think it will also, a heavy burden will fall on the governor and the legislature to make sure that it all works and to continue to reform and perfect and get things right. And with a lot of these things is make sure that keep spending low so that it's all affordable. And it's exciting. You and I have both talked about this, John. It's fun to tell that story.
It is,
to your colleagues around the country and almost brag on what we're doing here.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. Yeah. One other thing that I know, John, that you've done some looking at is what the governor has is doing or has proposed further on regulatory reform, and that's an issue that at ITR we've been a champion of for several years. But I'm going to let you talk about that one because you've done the work on it. But what's going on with regulatory reform in Iowa?
I'm hoping to have an article out on this either the end of this week or for sure next week. I just finished the draft this morning, but basically the governor last Tuesday, I believe, issued an executive order on basically establishing a moratorium on new regulations. So what that basically means is that there cannot be any new regulations, and that executive order also requires state agencies to start reviewing existing rules that are on the books over the next 4 years. And so by 2026, this process should be completed. And what the purpose of that review is that, as the governor mentioned in her condition of the state address, is that, Iowa's code, and you know that because you've got the volumes open on your desk all the time.
Just to be clear, I open them and lay them out on the desk because they look cool and it makes everyone think I'm working hard.
Okay.
But continue.
Yeah, we'll edit that. Okay. But there's
that's the real insider pro tip from the Capitol. Yeah. Just carry a code book around with you and everybody's like, oh, watch out. He's up to something.
But I think the governor referenced it's some 20,000 pages. And so basically what the purpose of this is to review these regulations, and especially to get rid of those that have an undue economic burden on Iowans, businesses, and we know that when you take the shackles off from the regulatory burden, it creates more opportunity. And the governor, this isn't the first time she's done this. In 2020, the legislature passed the occupational licensing bill, which created reciprocity, and so I think the governor understands the importance of not just having a competitive tax climate, but also you need a competitive regulatory climate. And really, we saw it firsthand when in the Trump administration, how that goes hand in hand with the Trump tax cuts, and then the deregulation effort by President Trump really created that really key part of that economic growth formula that occurred in his administration. I think the same thing's going to happen to Iowa, because when you start looking at regulations, everyone thinks regulations don't have an impact, but they do. I mean, they have a cost to them. They're kind of a hidden tax. Some regulations are good, and the idea here is not to get rid of every regulation, but to just measure those and see what is the impact on them. Are they discouraging people from working? Is it discouraging entrepreneurship? And other states have done this. For example, the former governor of Arizona, Doug Ducey, did an executive order, saved the taxpayers. I think it was $160 million, a little over that. Arizona is still looking at regulations. Ohio has a gold standard for regulatory reform through legislation. So this is a good thing that the governor is doing. She's also doing another thing, which I'm very excited about. And again, it's not the most exciting thing to talk about, but she's focusing on streamlining government. So not only looking at the regulatory code, but also looking at consolidating state agencies and what we would call the administrative state. Right now we have 37 cabinet departments. The governor's proposal wants to consolidate those down to 16. Roughly, her plan, I think, estimated would save taxpayers $215 million and make government more efficient. So all those things are very good things to do. And so I think reorganizing the government, getting control of regulation, and adding that to the good tax things that she has done is really going to benefit Iowa.
Yeah, I think sometimes regulatory reform, because it's not exciting on its face, and so it sort of devolves into a second tier issue or insider issue. But when you talk about barriers to economic growth, obviously tax policy is a big one, and it's measurable and you can see it. But regulatory reform can sometimes be death by a thousand cuts.
That's right. Yeah.
And so somebody asks for an example, and you give them what are the nuances of occupational licensure, for example, and that singular thing may not seem a lot, but when you have them strewn throughout the code, and as you talked about, 20,000 pages takes 5 years to go through. I would imagine the sum total of all that is pretty significant.
It is,
and the sum total taking it off of taking that burden off of Iowans that are trying to get ahead, grow a business, get bigger, make new investments, it adds up. And so when you talk about a state that's welcoming and open for business, the regulatory climate is absolutely a key part of that. And so the other thing too, that having the governor championing this, especially by executive order, is really helpful, because that that regulatory burden happens inside of the administrative state, which is governed by the governor.
Yeah.
And the legislature can pass certain laws, and they have a rules review committee that can keep an eye on that. But to really get down in the nitty gritty of those rules, you need an active executive branch that's willing to go down in there, because they're the ones that are the experts on those rules as well.
Yeah.
And so we have that going here in Iowa. And so I think this is going to be really helpful and really successful. So when you get that article up, we'll make sure that it's linked to it and folks can read that, because it's important stuff.
It is.
So,
yeah. I just want to mention one more thing, and this was from the Wall Street Journal. I think yesterday they had an editorial in their opinion section about, and this is just a lesson about Iowa cannot be complacent, because Wisconsin, which I think will be hard to do, but the legislature there wants to enact a flat tax, and it would be lower than Iowa's 3.2%. And it's going to be hard for them, because their governor is a Democrat who has pledged commitment to the progressive income tax. But it just shows us that the tax cutting movement within the states is still continuing, and there's more eagerness for states to get lower, flatter rates. And so as we've talked before, this is just another thing that by 2026 we'll have a 3.9% flat rate. But again, we can't be complacent, and I think the governor doing these things is only going to benefit Iowa in the long run, as we're competing with all these other states, because that's where Iowa's not, we're in an international economy competing, but we're also competing against 49 other states for jobs and people.
Yeah.
And so the taxes, regulations, the size of government, all that matters. And we can just look at these blue states like Illinois, California, New York, that are disasters, because they tax and spend and regulate everything out of existence, and the states are doing the opposite of that. They're going to be competing for the jobs and the people, and so I think Governor Reynolds is being very proactive in these fiscal policies that she's promoting.
Yeah, the competition among states is real. I think it's especially important with with our border states, like Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And so to continue to do whatever we can to make Iowa as competitive as possible. And as we kicked off the show, we're doing a fantastic job on it. And we're happy to continue to tell the Iowa story as much as we can get away with. So they'll get tired of us talking about it at some point, John. But if they want to shut us up, they can just do it in their own state, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're about out of time, and I think our listeners have probably had enough of regulatory reform for today. But thank you, John. Stay warm, stay safe out there. And with all of that, make sure you like and subscribe and tell your friends and leave us good reviews and anything else you can do to help us get this message out to as many folks as possible. And with all of that, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.